Hi, it's Monday, and I am continuing to create that lower V at the bottom of the copper shield shape. So that's what I'll be doing. I probably will read you, I'll read you chapter 2 of my historical fiction. Actually, yeah, that's right. I didn't read you chapter 1. I read you chapter 2. And so I'm going to read you chapter 3. It's all about the Spanish coming to our area in 1774. Okay, so I'll be reading as I'm narrating. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you for joining me. Again, I'm Evelyn Vanderhoop, Haida Weaver of Naheen and Raven's Tail, and I'm using this time of isolation to go forward with teaching this rare and important art for the Northwest Coast people. Thank you, Howard, for joining me.
Okay, my previous chapter was about how the Northern canoe came and surprised Doddens, and they brought news of a strange vessel on the horizon. So now I'm moving on to chapter 3. Goudet motioned for the second canoe to stay back behind the cedar screen. It was important that his dance of greeting have no distraction. All men aboard this strange, mysterious, massive vessel must be witness to his every move. A peaceful intention must be planted into every consciousness. The 6 paddlers and even young Goudet pulled their paddles hard to catch up to the vessel now that its large mats were capturing the western wind blowing seaward. That wind pushed on the back of old Goudet as he alone stood in the swiftly directed canoe. This momentous moment, when these strangers first noticed them, must make an impression that declared a willingness for friendship. So he waited for this moment with his arms held up, straight from his shoulders out to his side. The wind at his back was captured by his Thunderbird robe, pushing strength into his ancient spine. Goudet, paddling next to the old Skaga, did not take his eyes off the strange ship and the people on its deck. "Now, uncle, I see 2 men turning now." With these words, the canoe suddenly slowed to a stop. Paddlers pulled their paddles up high, then pounded the hull with rhythm. Goudet began the dance of his lifetime. Feathers topped his long, clotted hair. More feathers and bird down were contained within the ring of sea lion whiskers that rimmed his crown. A sharply bent-beaked Thunderbird mask fronted the headdress. Goudet shook his head, making the Thunderbird dip and release a white shower of billowing down. His hands scattered larger feathers out onto the water before the bow of the canoe. His old knees bent low as he dipped his head on each note that accompanied the paddles striking their canoe hull. The paddlers sang strong to carry this important song on the wind sweeping past them into the ears of the strangers. The massive ship creaked as the sails were pulled to stop its seaward glide. Goudet watched his old uncle, knowing that this would be his dance some day. He noticed how the old man shook his feathered head in such a controlled way that only enough eagle down was released to give a soft billowing effect. No overly abundant clumps fell out of the whiskered rim. This was important because this friendship dance must be sustained for the song's duration. Its spell of friendship would be broken, and much shame would come if the down did not spill out in abundance with the song's last note. Gunay divided his attention between the two vessels. He watched the Skaga dance, and he joined in the song of friendship. His young voice added high notes to the other's bass. But his eyes always returned to the men on the huge deck. He saw that all were watching. The two men that first noticed the approaching canoe were dressed differently than all the rest. Their long brown robes fell in drapes from their shoulders. They had appeared to have an air of equality with the gold-tasseled leaders earlier when Gunay and the rest were watching them unseen. Now the one that looked to be the oldest leaned over and said something into the ear of the triangle headdressed leader. That man then yelled out an order to a group of men near him. 3 men scrambled towards each mast's base and pulled long ropes, hoisting up white banners. The rhythmic upward tugs seemed to synchronize with the booming notes of the Haida paddler's song and drumming paddles. How serendipitous it was that the thunderous last note, when Guday's old knees bent their deepest bend, spilling out the last of the billowing down from his thunderbird crown, the 3 white banners reached their apex atop the high rigging of the stranger's huge vessel. Just as the song and drumming paddles had thundered, the silence now between these strangers' vessels seemed to roar in Guday's ears, as he felt his heart boom within his chest. The hoisted white banners declared the success of his friendship dance. Now, with his arms held wide, with palms facing up, he stayed his old legs still. The paddlers gently and smoothly brought the canoe around the huge exotic vessel, circling it slowly. The effort to maintain this still posture was more than the shaking and bending of the preceding dance. It took immense strength for Guday to quell his shaking legs and pounding heart. But this quiet stillness on his part was an essential precursor for the communication to follow. The silence was meant to allow each party time to form their thoughts. Guday concentrated on how he could best convey respect as well as authority in a confident manner towards the dark strangers whose copper-sheathed ship glinted with power. After circling the strange, huge vessel, the paddlers brought the canoe to the place right below where the feather-plumed triangular-capped leader and the 2 brown-robed men stood on the upper level of the large multi-decked ship. Guday moved his arms in voiceless greeting. These silent movements were well rehearsed. They were the customary movements that all strangers to the Haida territories received. The Haida neighbors along the mainland coast had no shared words within their separate languages. Wordless communication was often the essential manner of conveying messages within trade and war. After Guday's distinct, crisp, yet fluid movements, he reached his hands up towards the feather-plumed and gold-tasseled leader, indicating it was now his turn to put his thoughts to action. Guday and the other Haida aboard their canoe expected a song of greeting, a dance of friendship, before any voiceless reception with arms and hands. But this expectation was met with disappointment. The feather-plumed leader immediately began to speak his foreign words, coupled with hurried arm and hand movements. Gunay was puzzled by this almost frantic salutation. He looked into the old Skaga's face and saw that he did not have to convey this to him. Even with his waning eyesight, Guday could sense the urgency and was surprised by this hurried reception also. But the message became clear after the leader stretched out his arm towards the smoke-capped village and swept it across the tree-shrouded bluff above its bay. He then moved his fingers, flitting them downwards. Then, cupping his hands, he brought them to his lips and mimicked swallowing gulps. Gune thought, was the old Skaga's dance so powerful that it reduced these strange visitors into beggars? Gune foolishly slipped these thoughts into words, and his old uncle answered him, chastising. No, young one, do not let grand thinking cloud your judgment. I am surprised that a ship that big does not carry large reserves of drinking water for long travel upon the salt water. But their urgent need tells us one important thing, and that is, they are not supernatural. They are men, such as we are, mere surface birds upon Ginga's seas. The old Skaga instructed Gune to throw his high voice above the wind, toward the place where the second canoe hid, to tell Queance to fetch water and dried fish from the village for the strangers. Then they both directed their attention back to the ship and the man that continued to speak with hands and words of needs that seemed to go beyond food and water. Now that they were so close that Gune could almost count the hairs of their beards, he could see the sallow skin and sunken eyes of many of the common men. He told Goudet of their condition. The old Skaga replied that this must mean that these strangers traveled very far to get to their bay. The Haida were familiar with the weakness that long travel produced within their own large ocean-traveling canoes. They traveled often to the north, as far as where the nation of people who used seal-skin boats lived. They had sometimes even traveled as far south, where the men in reed boats were. The second canoe came around the point of the bay and swiftly approached with confidence. They came to a stop parallel to Goudet's canoe. Chief Cow is pleased and will receive you and the strangers tonight in his house, Queance told Goudet as he handed the dried fish bundles and bladders filled with water to the Skaga. Ung! Ung means yes in Haida. Ung was the single syllable of acknowledgement Goudet gave the chief's nephew. He quickly set his paddlers on the task to parlay the essential elements up to the thirsty strangers. The crew of the strange ship did not hold back their enthusiasm as they hoisted up the water bladders and fish bundles. They entered into a frantic huddle, and the precious fresh water would have spilled to nothing if the feather-plumed leader had not barked out his one-word order. Alto! Stop. That's stop in Spanish. Then, with contained dignity, he turned to Goudet and said loudly and distinctly Goudet's own word. Ung! This made the old man smile for the first time since news of this strange apparition had entered his consciousness. And if he was not such an old wise man, it would have even made him laugh the laugh that young Gounet was stifling as he reached up for the reciprocal gift that were being handed down from the strangers above. The flood of relief that this mistaken word for gratitude rushed through Goudet and buoyed his courage as he swept his arms towards his village, indicating to the strangers that they were welcome to go there for more of the much-needed refreshments. The feather-plumed leader responded, shaking his head side to side and pushing his hands as if to push away the bay. He swung his arms over his ship and up to the mats and into the wind. Gounet knew the message that the stranger's leader was telling. He recalled the frustrated frenzy that they had been experiencing before their decision to catch the prevailing wind out to sea. Their massive vessel floated heavy and cumbersome in their bay, and without the proper wind and tide currents, they could not safely move closer in. They conveyed their gratitude in the mistranslated word of ung, and showed with circular hand movements that they would visit the village with the incoming tide the next day. So thank you for listening to that last bit, and getting back to what I'm doing here in my demonstration. I'm splicing that last black row weaving braid around the copper shape. So always have two warps between the left and the right 3 strands, and then go across 2 warps and to the back. Across 2 warps and to the back. So there I've got all 3 on the right, and now I'm picking up the left, and I'm taking that back one, going across below its partners, across 2 warps and to the back. Under its partners, across 2 warps and to the back. And this last one is across 2 warps and to the back. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you enjoyed my chapter 3. If you wanted to hear chapter 1, you still can ask me about that, and I might do that. Okay, thank you so much.